evening, folks. I hope y'all are having a good start to your Pride Month. Happy Pride, happy June. This is the first time that I have hosted one of these, and I'm excited to be here with some other fine folks, Seth and Alex. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then I'll follow up after that. I don't know who wants to go first, but y'all figure it out.
My name is Pastor Seth Ahmad. I am the campus pastor at Virginia State University in Petersburg, Virginia. I am a native of South Carolina. I moved here in 2019 and became the campus pastor. I'm in the United Methodist Church and I am transgender.
Hello, everybody. I am Alex. I am from Chicago. I am one of the co-hosts of the new podcast, Black Gay Agenda. And happy Pride, everybody. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have y'all here and to be able to chat with y'all. Happy to see that we've got some folks joining us in the chat already. That's really exciting. I sort of low-key expected it to be us and each other. I'm glad to see that that's not the case. Um, so yeah, this is Pride TFC style. In case y'all don't know, Disrupted by Nature is a ministry of the faith community. I, for a long time, wanted nothing to do. I didn't introduce myself. I'm terrible. Well, let this be my introduction. My name is Josh. I am originally from Tennessee. I did my master's in Waco, Texas, at a school called Baylor. And then I came to FSU here in Tallahassee, and I'm getting my doctorate in comparative religious ethics. For a long time, out of my experience with the church, and I think that this may be true for a lot of LGBTQ plus people, it wasn't a great time. Didn't want really anything to do with the church anymore. And I think that this is not just a phenomenon that's common to me. I think that it's something that is very much widespread, and it only becomes more complicated once we add other identities, marginalized identities, on top of the ones that I experience and exhibit. TFC, I am pleased to say, does not fit into what I expected from a church group. So I am excited to celebrate Pride TFC style, if you will. And one way in which I want to do that is by thinking about the sort of environment that we have going on nationally, especially in places like Texas and Florida and other conservative states. I think Virginia has some nonsense going on up there as well, trying to limit drag performances, trying to ban healthcare for transgender individuals, trying to keep history, queer history, Black history, women's history out of our education system. This is a way of dismembering our community, of literally tearing us apart at the seams. I want us to engage in a counter movement to that this Pride, which is why I want us to think about the idea of memory as a way of celebrating Pride Month. And I sort of got this idea by thinking about this passage in the book of Joshua, where the Israelites are preparing to cross the Jordan River to come into the land that God has promised them. And the people are instructed to erect these stone monuments along the river. And the text says, your children are going to ask you later, what are these for? And you're going to tell them this story about how God brought you into the land that you were promised. I want us to think about remembering the people that have gone before us, the voices that were silenced and have been excluded from history, as a way of fulfilling that part of Scripture for ourselves. Call it a queer reading of the book of Joshua, if you will. So, in light of that, I've got some things I'd like to ask you, Seth and Alex. And again, I don't really care who wants to answer first or whatever. I want to first ask you, what historical LGBTQ plus person do you wish people knew about, and why do you wish people knew about them?
One of definitely the people that I wish someone had told me about was, and I kind of have two people. One being Mabel Hampton. She was a African American LGBTQI plus rights activist, born in 1902, and she passed away in 1989, and was a singer and a dancer during the Harlem Renaissance. Um, and I wish somebody would have said that. And I wish somebody would have told me that, one, because I grew up um, in South Carolina, as you know, and we talked about the Harlem Renaissance, but we didn't talk about queer people in the Harlem Renaissance. Um, so what South Carolina, what Florida, what Virginia is doing now is what they've been doing. Um, and it is something that I wish I knew, because I knew at the time, one, I was queer, but also knowing that I was transgender. Um, and nobody ever showed me that there's somebody who actually looks like me in this grand scheme of the Harlem Renaissance. The most historical education that I got, and I'm be honest with you, from my from pre-K to 12th grade, was MLK, Rosa Parks, names of people that are in history. Um, what happened was, for me, when I started my time in 2013 at Wake Forest University School of Divinity, and I took Black theology under Dr. Derek Hicks, and he began to unpack these people who were in history in my Black theology class, and she was one of them. And he talked about how our culture and how our people are multifaceted. We're not just a monolithic people. And being that we're not monolithic, he gave us names. And much like what you said, Josh, um, with in Joshua with the Israelites, I think that he gave me a history and a point to start, right? And being that he gave me a point to start, it helped me form my identity. It helped me form who I was, how I was gonna think. Like, it gave me some great insight to actually say, like, there were people before me that I did not know about. One, because I grew up in Church of God in Christ, and I grew up PAW. So, um, of course, LGBTQI plus community was not something that was talked about in either of the churches. And the second person that I learned about was somebody that Christians had on his show, Bishop Yvette Flunder. Um, Definitely, she was one who, when I heard her preach, when I heard about her, it was like, oh, they're actually queer people who preach. They're actually trans people who preach. And it gave me a starting point, because one of the things about African American culture, we have something that's the oral storytelling tradition, where we tell stories that, we can do that well. And listening to her and listening to how she decided to live her truth, and she was in the Kojic church, as most of you know, was one of those things. Was like, yeah, like, I can see somebody who actually identifies. And not only that, but like, one of the things that I like about the Joshua text that you're talking about is that it gives an oral history that, you're supposed to keep these stories going about how people made it over, how people got through what they got through. And I would beg to claim that somewhere down the line, where how I grew up, somebody quit telling the story. Somebody quit giving oral traditions on how and who and people that actually looked like me and were doing it, and who were making advances, the Stonewall riots, and how people have tried to erase these people literally from history. And all that's happening now in 2023, if they can erase history, then they can silence you. And the part of it is, and I tell people all the time, even when I'm talking to my sister, keep telling your kids the story, because if you don't tell your kids the full scope of the story, they'll be like me at 23 trying to play catch up and trying to catch up on actually historically, like, no, there are actually people here. And one of the things that I've learned, if people, the ability to erase history or try to erase history is has one thing and one job: to silence the marginalized, to silence the people who are the oppressed, who are on the outskirts. And that's what the governor of Florida is trying to do. That's what the governor of South Carolina is trying to do. That's what the governor of Virginia is trying to do. You got to keep your history alive, because if you don't tell the story, how can people know? How can people know if you don't continue to tell the story that, what, there was a Mabel Hampton, there was a Stonewall riot, there was a Bayard Rustin, there was a James Baldwin, like there was a Lorraine Hansberry. Somebody at some point in time, we have to be the people. If they're trying to take it away, you know what? You're not gonna take it away, because guess what? You can write a law about it, but you can't tell me what I can do in my home. You can't tell me what I can do when I'm talking to my niece and my nephew. You can't tell me what to do then, because guess what? They gonna know it, because then they're able to go back and look and say, you know what? Hey, if if the God of the Israelites helped them through, then the God of Alex, the God of Seth, the God of Josh still makes a way in 2023.
I love it. I love it so much. I echo everything that you've said. And I'm so glad that you brought up the point about us having to keep our own history alive. When I talk to my students about HIV and AIDS issues, they don't get it. They don't get that so many people died and so many straight people said, this is God's punishment on you. We have erased that from our history. And so when people like me want to bring it back up and say, this is what happened, they don't understand. They don't have a frame of reference for it.
And for me, that's the one thing I'm afraid of, that if you try to silence that, then the other, they're thinking off of a blank slate. You know what I'm saying? And when in actuality, that it's not a blank slate. You just have to keep digging. Keep putting your time in studying and making sure that not only, again, that your children know, but that people know. And one of the biggest things that I appreciate about me, and I think I was telling you guys this at first, I never wanted to pastor. And my grandmother said something to me, and she's gone now. She's been gone since March 10th. She said something to me. She said, "You know what? If if you stop telling the story, and if you're sent to tell the story, if you silence your own voice, then you're doing a disservice to humanity, to silence your own voice and not to make sure that the history is alive." Because so many times, like Bishop Yvette Flunder grew up in the Church of God in Christ, people weaponize the Bible against humanity, and it was never meant to be weaponized.
Very true. Alex, jump on in. Tell us what you got.
I mean, I'm just here to take up offering and do the benediction because, I mean, Seth has preached and has given us the people. No, Man, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to look for those people who aren't the common ones, right? Because like Seth said, we hear about all, the MIKs and all of the people that did the big things, right? That had the bulldozer, not the small shovels, right? So I wanted to find and for me, I'm a little bit older, about almost 20 years older than Seth. So from my grown upbringing, um, I heard about none of these people in the LGBTQ history, right? There's nobody. And what I love about environments like this is that it gives me the opportunity to do some digging, to do some, let me see who is out there that I didn't know about. So I did find somebody, and I think it's super relevant for what's going on in the world now. Like we both were talking about Richard Bruce Nugent. He was a writer, an illustrator, and he was also during the times of Harlem Renaissance era, where art and music and all of those things were huge, and where we were paving our own way in that right during those times. And he was openly and unapologetically gay in his writings. He was probably the only person at the time um, that truly highlighted same-sex love in those times. And the craziest thing about that is that at that time would have been huge, I would think. And it's crazy that we don't know. I never heard of him at all. And, it makes me think about now all of the talk about, the media's agenda, right, to push, LGBTQ plus things, and, the capitalism on all of the rainbow branded merchandise and all the stores, and then the reverse of all of the people now wanting to tear it all down, and people feeling as if it's all new, as if there's some big scheme in 2023 to push this upon people and children and everyone else, when you have the people that have been in the past and in history that have been Black and queer this whole time, that we were never told about, that we had nobody identified with. Like I spent a big part of my life denouncing that part of my life. You know what I mean? I spend more of the years that I've lived denouncing it than I have embracing it. I'll just say that, more of my life. And so, and also, there was no representation. There was nothing for me to be like, oh, that's what I feel. That makes sense now. Okay, I'm not crazy, or I'm not, the soul demon sitting in the middle of the congregation and everything. And I will say, the church I grew up in, thankful that it wasn't direct and direct in that manner. I think it was kind of one of those things where you kind of knew, you picked it up from around you, family, other kids, other people, everything around, the world and the themes of things going on and what was deemed as natural, right? So sitting there and every day thinking that it was me, the minority, or not just me, but me, the minority, not knowing that there were people before me, long before me, long before we had all these labels and what we have now, and all of the, the ways to explain how we all feel. You know what I mean? How we all felt. I mean, and I'm not trans, and I don't know the trans experience, so I wouldn't say that I would know, but I would guess that time people didn't have a name to what they felt. They didn't know what that was when they were learning or feeling who they were. So it was really it's really crazy how now it's always everybody's always like, oh well, this new agenda and this new agenda is like, but it's not new, but it's been washed. And that's what they're continually trying to do, wash it the same way they did with Black history. Like that, the curriculum, that the little curriculum that was there was forced. I remember in high school, we had to do a senior paper, and I wanted to do a paper on lynching, and I wanted to talk about prior lynching, current lynching. I went to the library, and there was nothing, nothing, nothing more than some encyclopedia posts, which were more about definition and defining what it was than instances and stories. And as we talked about, telling those stories, right? Stories about it. None of those things were in any books. Everything that I found was something that was either something about defining what lynching was, or an estimation, just proving, just something maybe saying that it did actually happen, but no stories about it. Not enough for me to write a paper on. I couldn't even write a paper. I couldn't write a paper. I gathered things, and I was just like, it wasn't enough for me to write a high school paper. And I was shocked, because it was like, wow, it made me feel like, it almost made me feel as if it was like a folktale, or like, you know what I mean? Like it was a story that was told that we don't really know for sure, but it was just something that we heard, you know what I mean, that happened, because there was no there was nothing, written. There was no history of it. And that's what I think is very, very important about it all, like making sure that there is history, right? Making sure that we do have something to look at. And like Seth was saying, making sure that, those growing up do see, that these people existed, and telling people's true stories, right? I mean, parents and children relationships, you grow up and you have to have the hard pill of knowing that your mom or your dad is not an invincible superhero, that they made mistakes. How devastating is that when you finally, find out that you did what? You know what I mean? So, but had you understood that, growing up, that people make mistakes and that everybody is not this, and the full scope of people, what is good, what is bad, what is their real life like, what did they really go through, so that people understand. So when we encounter those things and ourselves, we can see ourselves in the past, and we're not left so like lost and so orphaned about who we are.
Yeah. You silence a group, you destroy its history, you silence that history, not only for the purpose of, you know, absolving your group of whatever culpability they might have had, it also allows you to create the narrative about that group. What happens when you don't remember queer history? Well, you get to label people as pedophiles, as aberrations, as confused, as people with disorders or diseases, rather than dealing with the complexity of the human person standing in front of you, or the human person that your grandparents, your parents, maybe even you treated a certain way. It is a way of bypassing the situation. It is a way of absolving yourself from responsibility. Forcing people to recount and recollect that history eliminates the potential for that bypassing. At least it makes it far more difficult. That is one reason why we need to remember and celebrate Pride, not just as a acknowledgement and a celebration that we are still alive despite some groups' best efforts,
Yeah.
but also to make things easier, not only for ourselves, but for future generations, so that they don't have to do this shit.
And one of the I think the only way to combat invisibility is through reclamation. And that is a process of discovery and demarcation. That because one of the things that was the hardest for me coming out as a trans person was making sure that I could reclaim the story, but also making sure that I wasn't invisible. And the way for us to combat it is through how we reclaim our stories. And so, for example, much like Alex, when he said he was in high school, he couldn't write a paper on lynching. I could have never in a million years tell you about LGBTQIA plus, one, because it's my lived experience, but two, because it was not taught. And by the time I got to seminary, again, I was playing catch up because it was one of those things that you did not talk about. And more so recently than not, South Carolina's speakers of the House and representatives have been on TikTok, and they've literally been recording the session from their meetings. And I'll never forget in this more recent one of the House of Representatives says, "When has books and people of the LGBTQIA plus community ever hurt anybody? We have more shootings in America than we have LGBTQIA plus people who are taking out people just for the hell of it." And we are people who our voices are powerful when we come together and when we stand by one another and stand with one another.
Well, I think that you said something really important there, that remembering our history is also a way of making yourself not invisible. But y'all know as well as I do that with not being invisible means that that's a good thing and a bad thing. Meaning that we have to do the work of taking care of ourselves. My second question for y'all is sort of along those lines. Who in your life has helped you to embrace your gender identity, your sexual identity, and how do you honor them? And I'll say a little bit about this while maybe y'all think and decide which of you wants to go first. Maybe we should let Alex, since Seth has talked first in the last couple. Um, it's probably going to be, honestly, the friends I've made along the way who have made the biggest impact. My family was not affirming. Um, some of them still aren't. Some of them have different levels of comfort. But when I needed them, it was the blood, the family that I've chosen that were able to show up for me, and they continue to show up for me. How do I honor them? I honor them by telling my truth. They didn't go out on a limb for me so that I could be meek and quiet in a corner. That's not what we're not. That's what we're not going to do. Alex, please jump in.
Yeah, so I definitely want to say my immediate family, my mom and my sisters. It was so hard being my mom's only son and her oldest son, and having younger sisters, and all of the the thoughts and things that the self doubt about who you are, and all of the self-loathing, and praying, and crying and wishing I wasn't, and all of that that I went through alone, because of the fear of being open with them about it. But once I did finally um let them in on my truth, it was amazing. Like I there's still some struggles. My mom was born in the late 50s. So she is, she's her. And, we grew up in church and all of that. And there's still some things that, we talk about. But the thing that I love is that we talk. And the thing that I love is that she is open to hear and discuss with me, and we can have a conversation. And if I disagree, I can do that with her, and she will listen and hear me and admit if she's wrong or give me her perspective fully, and we can have real dialogue about it. And to me, that is enough, because I mean, just as she doesn't know, much, and all of her gathering is from what she's seen on TV and in the media and from shows that she watches, which is the most hilarious thing. She always asks me something about that show that she saw and telling me something. But, it's just like, it's good. And then definitely my sisters. And then I had another friend, a friend of mine. I knew her truth before she knew mine. And her transparency and like boldness, like this girl was just like, she didn't care. She was her. And even though I still held back, just seeing the way that she lived, helped me like get it. And so I'd say that those definitely are the people that's helped me the most. And of course, friends along the way, right? I think it all goes all the way back to what we said in the beginning: representation, examples, right? You see the spectrum as you open up little by little, and you see all of the facets and all of the different people and all of what this community is. There's not just the stereotypes, right? There's all across the board. And when you start to see that, you start to understand and embrace it and love it for what it is. And I think that's what helped me be able to look at myself and resonate with my identity, by being able to see others in theirs. So yeah.
Sure, Seth, go ahead.
I think for me, everybody knows it was my grandmother. As one person, and a part of it is because she had two queer sons and a queer grandson, and she lost her grandson and her son when I was about 4 and 5, and my cousin had AIDS, and her son left and lived in Harlem most of his life. I saw him one time, and that's when he came down for my grandfather's burial in the 90s. I was probably about 4 or 5, maybe younger. He did not come back to the South until we were burying him in 2016. 2012. That is one person. My parents are not open and affirming. My mother is coming around in her own way. But my grandmother was a very huge source of love and of care and of just being who she was. Like I said, she said, if I have to preach hell to you just to get you saved, then does the gospel really have the power? And she wasn't trying to
Come
change
on,
me.
Grandma. Yeah.
She wasn't trying to change me. Um, and I would definitely say, in the last 3 years, it has become my partner and my bonus kids, because they are the absolute best. I have started my journey with tea with them. I have transformed right in front of them. Um, and again, the friends along the way, but definitely my grandmother and my partner and my family that I have built now, have been affirming. They've been kind and loving. Um, they've walked with me through some of the most challenging times as a transgender person, and given me that safe space. My partner, who's my best friend, has given me a safe space. Um, she has been that person. She's been that safe landing space. That when I'm ready to um, get you read right, She has been that safe landing place for me. She's not gonna let anybody come and say anything crazy to me. Um, she's been that one who's like she's just been for the last 3 years. Um, and I'm grateful for them because they have made sure that I know, one, that I'm loved, two, that there's nothing wrong with me, but also three, that you know that I'm family, period. And that has been a breath of fresh air um because I have been able to show up as myself. And Leah just wrote, and Leah is like one of the best people. Let me tell you something. Leah is, she's been also a great just person who's been on this journey with me. Um, and these people have just loved me, period. They loved me for me. And I did not have to change myself. I did not have to um, be somebody that I was not in their presence. And to be on this journey, it's been a sacred one, but it's been one where I've been able just to be. And that's been the most beautiful thing, because growing up in South Carolina, um, if you make it out, you never want to go back. And 150% honesty, I don't go back often, um, because of the way that things are, and just how, you just, when you see something different, and when you allow people not to make you invisible, it's hard to go back to that invisibility. um and I can concur with Alex when he says, listen, like, some of my life has been spent in hiding. But one of the things that my uncles taught me, and even though I was young, was that you're not going to silence me. You're not going to make me invisible. Although my grandmother's second son never came back um, to South Carolina after my grandfather's death in the 90s, he came back when we were burying him. He still didn't allow people to make him invisible. He still didn't allow it. And what most people don't know is that he was the first one probably to see it in me. He said, "Live your truth. And if you can get out of South Carolina, get out." Those were his words to me probably about a year before he died. And when I got out, I never went back. And so it's coming out of that place of invisibility, and these people who have made my life so much more worth living and being, period.
Yeah, these people that have helped us, that have sustained us, that's part of what we do to take care of ourselves as LGBTQ plus people. This is true probably for everybody to some extent, but it's especially true for folks whose families of origin are not always safe places. It's especially true for people whose hometowns are no longer home, can never be home again. There is a loss that people feel in the LGBTQ plus community, a loss of community, a loss of church, that I don't know off the top of my head, that I don't know that it's paralleled anywhere else. And I could be wrong here. I haven't given it a ton of thought. That's just kind of off the top of my head. Um, But let me ask you this, and I know that I didn't send you all this question beforehand. It's sort of a closing comment, if you will. What's one thing you wish you could tell a young LGBTQ plus person, maybe who's still in the closet, who's looking around and is real scared? What would you tell them? Let me give you, Seth, you good? Go ahead.
Um, you are made in the divine image of God. That who you are And what you were born for and how you were born is not a mistake. There is nothing wrong with you that you feel like that life is not worth living. To the person that's in the closet because people want to stop your voice, keep digging into the well of discovery. Keep digging in the well of history. Keep digging in the well of just being you and showing up as yourself. I was in my seminary journey, and I'll never forget. Uh, every Tuesday we did chapel, and when we did chapel, we had communion, and everybody was to take a part of communion. And when they broke the bread in communion, they would say to us, "This is the Lord Jesus Christ's body that is broken for you." And so, to the person that is living in the closet, Jesus didn't die for you to stay there. The Lord loves you just like you are. You are not an abomination. You are not a person who has to hide in the closet, but keep digging in that well. Don't let nobody else tell you what you're not. Because if they can tell your story, if they can silence you and kill you, when it's time to come to bear you, they'll say you liked it and you didn't.
Wow. Alex?
I know. So as I was thinking about that question, what I thought about was what I wanted to hear and what I wanted to know, what I was searching for, what I needed to feel okay. And the one thing was affirmation, and affirmation spiritually, um, from God. I so needed that because of the environment I grew up in. And then affirmation as far as just it's gonna be okay. And I remember the first time I was at one of the services, and I just chatted Callie because I wanted her to give me the exact words of the affirmation, because um, the when she does her piece before for the children, before we have Bible and beyond or in the services, she, after the especially for Let's Talk About Sex Month, where we did the whole, the boundaries, right after that she would do the affirmation. And the first time I heard that affirmation, it made me feel away, like for real. Like, and to somebody else that, and I think a lot of people don't get it. Like, I said it to my mom, and it wasn't big to her, right? Because she already felt affirmed, right? She didn't need that, right? But the affirmation, uh, God made me on purpose. There are people here today who love and support me. Um, I can be my authentic self, just as Jesus showed me. Like, being able to be my authentic self and know that God made me on purpose. I don't have a glitch. I don't have an error. I'm not a mistake. I'm not uh for all my Star Wars people, I'm not Bad Batch. I'm not part of the Bad Batch. I am on purpose. Um and to keep being yourself. And the other thing that I would do for that person is to say, I'm here. Like, a lot of times people have, they have all those feelings, and they have people that love them, but they have no one to talk to, no one to be, on one accord with, no one, no visibility, no one that they can share, and be mentored by, you know what I mean, and learn from and ask questions to and understand things that may happen or come up or that someone else may tell you. Just like we want to talk about sex with children or young adults to make sure that they're not hearing it from their peers. Well, same thing. Like, we needed somebody to talk to about the things that we encountered that maybe our parents wouldn't have been able to because they didn't encounter that. You know what I mean? And I think that's huge too. So those two things really big for me is what I would have loved to get, and I would definitely think that someone else after me would need it as well. And that's those are the two big things that I would say, or give or offer.
Those are great, and it's going to make my suggestion sound really, really, really coarse and sort of trivial. I'm going to say it anyway. As the great RuPaul frequently says, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? That's what I would say to that person. And as long as you are stuck where you are in fear, worrying about what other people are going to think, worrying about whether God hates you, worrying about what the church is going to do, you ain't loving yourself. You can't love yourself. And because you can't love yourself, you can't love your neighbor. And really, because you can't love your neighbor, you can't love God. So you've got a whole slew of problems there that you've got to work out.
Yeah.
In short, girl, go get your life. That's my suggestion. Again, y'all said it better. That's what I got. Anybody want to have the last word? This has been a good conversation.
It's been great with both of you guys. It's been great to be a part. It's been great to have new family come in to the fold of my family. If anyone ever needs to talk who's still in the closet and still trying to figure this thing out, I will definitely walk with you. If you need anything, you can find me on Facebook. I'll tell you, I'm lit on Facebook most times, so please don't let that deter you. Please don't let my
Lord, Seth, the things you post.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Don't let that deter you. What I said about Ruth, please. The original Princess of WAP. The original. So don't let that deter you. Be encouraged. You're holy and whole.
All right, Alex, you want anything?
Man, I'm just happy to be here. Honestly, I know that sounds like one of those moments. I'm just so happy to be here. But literally, a friend of mine kind of put me on to TFC, and like for months I was like, yeah, okay, because of the thing we just said. You can't love yourself, you can't love your neighbor, you can't love God. I was kind of had left God for a while and was like, yeah, I don't think I want to, do that for a while. I'll look at it, I'll see what it is. But this person was wanting me to help them in ministry as well. And in my mind, I felt if I'm not able to minister to me, how can I help you in that? Even if it's not ministering directly, but I don't even feel it. And so in my head, I'm like, I need something to build me first. I need to make sure that I'm affirmed first. And you referred me here, and I will say, as soon as I engaged, it was like a switch flipped, and all of the zeal and all of everything that I had growing up, and in my young adult years being in church, it all is starting to come back. And I love it. And I am thankful for spaces like this. I'm thankful for all of the spaces that TFC offers. It's amazing. And for the opportunity to speak on this platform, to be able, to just talk with you guys and hang out, and everybody in the comments and all that. So I'm just grateful and thank you.
Yeah, I agree. This was really wonderful. I enjoyed getting to conversate. Conversate, is that a word? To have a conversation with y'all.
It's common
Uh,
vernacular. You can use it.
Somebody gonna hit me with a dollar jar. It's coming.
People
I
say
can feel it.
it.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate, I hope y'all have a happy Pride. I hope that you do the most extraordinary acts of resistance this month, which is to celebrate yourself and other people and to remember where you came from, the people that have paved the way so that you can be here, and that you educate other people to make sure that those memories aren't lost. Happy Pride. We'll have more events throughout the month.
Happy Pride.